Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, Podcast Pete and lifestyle coach. And man, we got a coach, another coach. When you can get two coaches for one, you've got a good podcast. So thanks for being here. We had a little technical difficulty, but we worked it out. So Cliff, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into your story in the podcast.
Sure, Pete. Thanks for having me. So I'm Cliff Pelloni. I'm founder and CEO of I Did Author Publishing, and I help coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, experts turn their genius into a professionally published and profitable book.
I love the fact that, you hear it a lot of times. We always have one or more books in us. So what do you think is the challenge to get that book out? Because it doesn't do us any good if it's in our brain. It only is good if it's out working the way it can work. What do you think the biggest challenge is?
Sure. So, Pete, you're right. I mean, I tell all my authors that while I'm going to hold the intention for the book to sell tons of copies, that's really not what the book's purpose is. The book's purpose is a tool for them to get more of what they want, more speaking engagements, to accelerate the sales process, to get more authority, to get more PR, that type of thing. And so we have to take them from idea to author and get that information, out of their head and into their hand through a book. After doing hundreds of books from people from all different types of backgrounds and experience, I found a couple different things. One, people have to believe that they're worthy of writing a book. They have to know that what they have to share is valid. And the thing is, if they're doing business in the world, they already know that. They have questions that they get all the time from their customers. There's things that they want them to know. There's stories to share. So, but they have to get over that. They got to know, yes, I'm worthy enough to write a book. And then two is the where to start, right? A lot of people don't know where to start or which book to write. Because like you mentioned, people have a book in them, usually multiple books. We have to identify who their target market is, their audience, the ideal reader. And that's usually the first book that they should be writing. And so that's another process. And then it's just the procedure of taking all that experience and knowledge and into that's in their head and finding a way to get it onto their page. I've found that over the course of years, there's really three types of authors. One, they're writers, there's modifiers, and there's verbalists. And let me cover these really quick. So a writer is someone who can just sit down and write, right? They can sit down with their laptop or with a pad and really just create copy at will. I'm not that guy. There's the modifiers, the people who can take something that's existing and then add their touch, add their stories, make it better, that type of thing. And then there's verbalists. And the verbalists are the people who, if you give them an outline and say, let's talk about this, they can go forever and the content just flows. And a lot of people are a combination of different things. I'm a modifier verbalist. I'm good at relaying the information, but I'm also good at taking that information, and then once it's into a format where I can modify it, it's much easier for me. So those are the major stumbling blocks from people starting their book. And also when I mentioned too, is that the concern or the fear of no one's going to want to listen to them, and what if my book is no good? And so it really comes down to the fact is you have information to share, you're knowledgeable about something, and you just need to work with someone to figure out how to, get you through the process.
Ooh, I love that. I always say that, not always, but a lot of times is people have to be interested in whatever you're doing, whether work, whatever. And if you're trying to talk to people that aren't interested, it's just going to fly right over their head. Talk about when you first started your journey from corporate to your video journey in approaching people, what it was like before your book and what it was like after your book.
Sure. So I came out of corporate. I've had a lot of experience. I worked from startups to mid-sized Fortune 4 companies. And a number of years ago, I came out and I started my own video marketing company. And this is when video wasn't like really huge. So with any endeavor, it's a little more of an uphill battle getting started. And so I was reaching out to people, wasn't having much luck. At the time, I'm like, well, I want to write a book, and I've got a bunch of knowledge and experience and thoughts on this topic. So let's write a book. So I did. I created a small little book. It was a small book, but it was a great book. And I used that in my marketing. I used it to reach out to people in advance of me contacting them. And the conversation changed immensely. So before it was like, who are you? Don't bother me, right? You're just someone else is going to take my time. When I sent my book out in advance, and sometimes it was physical, sometimes it was just the electronic version, but I sent out in advance and it completely changed the conversation. It was now like, oh, Cliff, let's talk about how you can help me, right? So the authority and the acceleration of the sales process and so many things that a book can do for you occurred. And other people saw that that book helped them. That helped me, and they wanted me to help them with their book, and it just morphed into a publishing and consulting company. And I've done hundreds of books for people through all spectrums of different industries, ex-NFL players, national speakers, functional medicine doctors, heart doctors, cooks, chefs, diabetes people, little old ladies who run women's shelters. And my oldest client right now is Roz, who's 96. And she wanted to become an attorney at age 50. So she did and practiced for 42 years. And now we're writing her book. So if Ross can do it, anybody can do it.
That is so good. I like to, when I'm coaching and talking to people, I talk about activities versus assets. And an activity is like I go to a networking event, it starts and it's over. An asset just continues to grow. Talk about a book as an asset and what that means to a person when they create those assets that live on. I mean, you write it once, you got it, versus activity where it starts and ends.
Right. And then that's a perfect example, Pete, that a book is a tool. That's what I tell everybody that I work with. A book is a tool, and you need to figure out how you're going to use that tool. We all know that it takes multiple touch points for someone to be comfortable with you before they usually move on to within the sales process. And the book is one of those things where it can just stay with you. If you receive a book or you buy a book, usually don't throw it away. It usually stays around. It might be on your desk, might be somewhere else. It conveys immediate authority. It's a way for people to spend time with you not being present, right? They don't have to search out a video, or they don't have to listen to a podcast. It's right there. They can pick up, read a few pages, that type of thing. It elevates your status above other people that are probably similar to you in what they're doing, right? So if you got 3 speakers and they're all trying to get on a podcast, and we got one of them that's got a book and they market it properly, they're going to get attention first. Doesn't mean the other people won't, but they're going to get the attention first because there's something about a book. I say that that if you look at it, the first part of the word authority is author, and that's what it does. It just creates a bunch of authority. The other nice thing about a book is you can use it in so many different ways. You can use it in a funnel. I've got one of my clients and friends, Damon the Drone Boss. He's the world authority on starting business with drones. He created a book and he uses it in his funnel. I use a free plus shipping funnel, and it introduces people to his courses and trainings and stuff like that. And he's done tens of millions of dollars just with a lead generation from part of his book. I mentioned a lady that owned a women's shelter, Sylvia. She runs women's shelters, and she created kind of a life story book, but there's some lessons and that type of thing. And she used her book to get like $50,000 of free legal work from one of the top legal firms in Boston, so she could create more shelters. People can take their book, and once they've organized their content, people are using it to create social media posts for a whole bunch of time. You can, now with the advent of AI, there's ways that you can take your book and it can pump out a lot of different content that's already in your voice because you've written it. And so I've never seen a better marketing tool as an investment that you can leverage in so many different ways than putting your skills and your knowledge and your experience into a book.
Yeah, when I first, I've written of several, but There's a gentleman by the name of Daniel Priestley, and he's
Mhm.
written Key Person of Influence. He wrote, and he
Yep.
just finished another book, Lifestyle, and each book has a specific ideal prospect.
Yep.
Talk to our viewers about how important it is to write to a person that your book is going to connect with, because I think people think, I got to write a novel, I got to write all this stuff, and I got to dump it all out. But let's talk about specific how a person goes about that.
Sure, and that's a really key piece of what we work with our authors in the front part of our programs, is that they a book's a tool, and so they're already dealing with customers. They already have a profile of the customers. They might not have it on paper, but they have some kind of idea of who their customers are, right? Because they're already doing business, and we want to make sure we're writing the book around those customers. We want to take the most frequently asked questions that we get from those customers. We want to get the information that the author normally shares in the sales process. So there might be things that you always want to share, right? We want to get the stories that are going to resonate with those people that are your ideal customers. So successes, sometimes failures or whatever it is going to be, but the story. So it's kind of like we're taking what you're doing already. We're taking the knowledge in your head. We're taking your sales process, and we're going to identify who you're doing business with. Maybe you want to do business with those people, and then maybe some other segment that you want to bring into this. But then we're going to format. We're going to format the chapters of the book, the content of the book, everything to attract those people, to answer those questions that they normally have, for those concerns, the things that you want. So by the time they go through and they actually read it, they've accelerated through the sales process. You don't have to start at phase one. You're all the way through the sales process. So they're at the point where, I've had people just hand out books at events, and then people call up and want to do business with them because they've answered all their questions. They're an authority, and they're ready to do business. So it's a really crucial piece, and it's something we address, early on in our programs.
Yeah, that's so important. What do you think? Because today there's a lot of distractions, and how do you handle distractions and stay focused on what you're doing?
Yeah, it's really easy to be distracted. It's going to get worse. Just some of the things that I do that are beneficial for me. I create a list, obviously, the night before, and it ends up being like 30 things, because I always got like 30 things to do. But I pick the top 3 that are going to move the needle, and then I just start with that one and just keep working at it until I get it done and move on to the next one.
Mhm.
It's really easy for us to be stuck at our computers and sitting down all the time, kind of drains our energy. So I make a note to get up every 45 minutes or something, stretch, walk around, get away from the computer to help, maybe take a walk midday or something. That helps me keep fresh. I batch my emails. Some people wake up and they just jump right into their emails. I'll try to batch time my emails, because it's kind of one of those things where I want to be in control of my day, not somebody else. And I don't want to give my time to the people that are requesting things from an email standpoint. Yeah, try to keep things on your work computer or whatever you're going to use that are not social aspects, right? So if you can have a social aspect, like a website or social media or something like that, if that's not a key part of what you're working with, don't make it available, because it's too easy to default to it. And then I don't know, just taking inventory of actually seeing what you've accomplished, because I think that's one of those things that people disregard, is that even if it's a small thing, there's studies that prove that if you just put a line through it or a check mark or something, there's a little dopamine hit and there's a little satisfaction to go, actually, I accomplished this, and that you've made something, and it can be very small, but it's still an accomplishment. And then just keeping track of those things that help you keep motivated for the rest of your day or week.
There's some great thoughts. We all have 24 hours, and nobody has more, nobody has less, unless you're not around. But But when you look at your day, share with our viewers, like, how do you look at that day? I love the idea that you take your first three items and then go after the first one that moves the needle, because just checking off things, if you're not checking off the right things, could be a false dopamine. So just kind of share, like, how does Cliff manage his day? You told us a little bit about it, but could you go a little deeper?
Sure. So, one of the things we all, it's funny, you mentioned 24 hours. That's what I tell my authors. Like, I don't have any time to write a book. Well, we all got 24 hours. It's not really, we all have 24 hours. So it's really a time management issue. Not the fact is they don't have time, because you got all the time that everyone else has, right? We all do. From a day standpoint, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Like I said, if you make a list and you got 30 things, your daily list, I've learned a long time ago, is really like my weekly list, right? So if I went through but when you put it down all together at one time, it's like, oh my gosh, how can I accomplish all this stuff, right? One of the biggest things too is what's going to move the needle. What are the things that are going to move the needle in the biggest way? Now, you might feel when you sit down some dis-ease or some uneasiness or something, because you realize there's things on the list that you could just check off really quick, right? Mm-hmm. And if they're important and you can do those, great. But if there's something that you really need to do, the satisfaction that you're going to get by getting that done is going to be immense. And so I really try to spend some time figuring out what that is. Make a plan and work your plan. It's not anything that's amazing or that I've created, but it's make a plan and work your plan, right? Know that distractions are going to happen. There's things that are going to come in. There's going to be a quest. There's some things that are going to take your time, and maybe allow for those. So what I do is there's a short period of time in the afternoon where that's my distraction time, right? Those are my last request time. And I take that time, and that's where I address those. And I get done as much as I possibly can in that time. And then if not, then I have to move it out to later in the day, like after hours or to the next day. Getting away from your desk and your computer, I think, is a very important thing. Mm-hmm. If you work at home, go for a walk, get on your recumbent bike or your exercise bike or rebounder or whatever you want to do, go do a push-up, just get away from your desk, because you need that brain to have a little bit of break, and you need to use some physicality. And so your brain can kind of reset and come back and get work done. We've all been there. We've all gotten to a point where we're working, and the return that we get from the effort we're putting in is decreasing, because we're just, we've hit that wall. So go off and hit that wall. Be kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. If you get 3 things done that were your top 3 things, and you got a list of 10 other ones, that's just be kind to yourself. You're accomplishing things. You're getting things done. Gosh, I don't know what else. Use systems, right? And that's what I tell my authors. Like, you want to leverage systems, learn what works for other people, and maybe test some of those things out. I've got, I'm old enough that I use my Franklin planner. I don't know if people remember what that is, but once you go back and, it was a system. It was a system. And it's like, do I move this forward? Is this closed? Am I waiting for somebody else? And so that's kind of Cliff's day.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's beneficial. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And but I want to go deeper too into this, because we're seeing AI change the landscape of big companies. They're having to figure out how many people do they need. So there's a lot of people shuffling around. I don't know if you experienced, when I stepped out of corporate for the first time, I went from people telling me what I need to do to figuring out what I needed to do. And it was a big adjustment. How did you handle, you're working, what you have to do, to being an entrepreneur and, starting that video business? How did you handle that mindset shift that we all have to make when we step into being more entrepreneurial?
Yeah, part of it was just also gosh, I'm the one making all decisions, right? And it was kind of, it was kind of on me. Being in corporate, in addition to doing your described duties, I found that there was always things they wanted you to do extra. Do this extra training, learn this tool, do this other thing. Oh, we got a new expense report system. Don't you do it that way? Do it this way. And so there was that pull between being productive and getting done what I'm supposed to be done and getting judged on, and versus all the extra stuff they wanted me to do. When I came out of corporate, there was nobody to do that for me, right? To tell me what to do. And I had to figure out pretty quickly that what do I need in my business the way it is currently that's going to help me move some of those things forward. Part of it was like expense capture, setting up an accounting system. What am I going to use to track leads? Because before they would just provide that stuff for me, right? How am I going to track leads? Who are my customers, right? So there's so many different things. The other thing too is not working 24 hours a day, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur, it's really easy because you're wearing the sales hat, marketing hat, administrative hat, but finance hat, PR hat, the whole thing. And so that can suck the life out of you really quick. And you need to generate revenue, you need to generate customers, but you also need to have a life too. So you got to make sure that you're really careful on that it doesn't take over your life like 100%, right? And then connecting with people, because when you're in corporate, that's almost a given. You're having meetings, you're meeting folks, they have events, that type of thing. When you come out of corporate, I don't know if this like happened with you, but it's like it's me and my laptop. It's just, and it's really easy. And this is pre-COVID, right? So that's what I'm talking about, COVID. But this was just like, okay, there's, I got to find events to go to. I got people let me, it's got to start networking, that type of thing. So it's, don't be a hermit behind your computer, network, and fortunately now you can network online. That's the amazing thing with technology and stuff. You can reach out. We're doing this right now through networking. And so that's something that you really need to keep in mind, no matter where you are in your journey, but you just keep on networking.
Well, yeah, I love that. What would be your best kind of relationship tip that you could share with our community that you've discovered and I want to focus on the entrepreneurial journey more than your corporate journey, because I think they're very distinct worlds.
Yeah. So relationship tip, I think give value. I think that's really, I remember my dad used to tell me, in a different way, but give value. And people and there's, you can provide a service for somebody, but they're not going to remember the service so much as the experience and then the way that they were treated. And we've all been places where, you go to a restaurant and I ate, the meal was okay, but the experience was great and the whole thing's, and I wanted me to come back. So probably my biggest tip would be to provide value, but provide a great experience for these people. And that's going to just help you immensely. I mean, for the longest time, I worked only by referral or application because my customers had such a great experience that they just, without even asking, referred other people to me. And they want, everybody wants to make sure that they're telling their friends something that they're going to have an experience just like they've had. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson.
That is so good. If you had to advise Cliff at 18 years old, knowing what you know now, what would be your biggest advice to an 18-year-old Cliff?
Mistakes are okay. That's how you're going to learn. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to know what you're going to do at 18 because it's going to change. It's going to change several different times. Discover things that you like to do on a daily basis and see if there's some work that you can incorporate that into. Do you like to be with people? Do you like numbers? Do you like to plan things? Do you like to organize things? Spend a little time figuring out what that is, and then look at careers that would let you do that on an ongoing basis. Because I think too many times when we're young, we're like, oh, you'd be a good whatever. You got skills for this. And you may have some skills, but it's not really what you like to do. I mean, it's not really what you like to do. So those would probably be probably like in by Microsoft and Apple.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Because when you hear people because I heard somebody say like Jeff Bezos, he only had one stock, Amazon. And he didn't like go buying all these different ones. He knew what he believed in, and he just kept adding value, and it worked out pretty good. So what would you say? Yeah, we're hearing AI. I mean, every time you turn around, you got an AI story out there. How are you handling AI, and what are you most excited about in this next year of how you're implementing AI or using AI to help Cliff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I recently did a LinkedIn post that says your AI book is crap, but it doesn't have to be. Because I think what's happening is in some circles, and people see this, and I'm going to relate this to first about books and then just general. I'll write your book. You let AI write your book. Upload some information, and it's going to be in your voice and everything. And I've seen people try to do it, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it's not the type of book that you want to represent yourself. A professional book that people are, that type of thing. Now, that being said, AI is a fantastic tool. I mean, it's a fantastic tool. Mm-hmm. I've taken some of the processes that I have in my brain and that I run people through manually, and I've created custom GPTs and things like that. So now that I can either put those into a course or I can hand them off. So if someone doesn't want to engage me at a higher level, which includes coaching, they still can get some of my thought process, and they can do that. So that's really cool. We're using, for me, also covers are a huge thing. So I'm really big about having your book be professionally published. Look professionally published. There's too many books out there that are self-published, and they just scream self-publishing. And the thing is, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but people will judge the book by its cover. They're going to judge the contents of its book, and they're going to judge you and the quality of your work by what you put out. So I'm really big about making a book like it came out of a publishing house. And so the nice thing, so what I would normally do if I'm engaging with a client was we would have a cover design contest, right? With book cover designers. We get a whole bunch of different options, and we still do that. But with some of the clients that I have, they kind of have some idea of what they like, the color spectrum. They might have branding colors for the company. They have some ideas. So we use AI to come up with some basic images, some things that they like. Yeah, I'd like this. This is something like that. And then we give that to a designer, a book designer, or a group of book designers. And then they're able to come up with, a much better design faster. And some people, AI's even designed their book. I mean, there's elements that you have to have for me with your cover. There can't be any confusion. There has to be a distinctive eye flow pattern. There's only a few seconds before someone is gonna, when they look at your cover, if they're gonna proceed or they're gonna pivot. And so, but I've recently had AI create some great covers, but we tweak them and tweak them and tweak them and tweak them, right? And then we still give it over to a designer to make it completely professional. So that's one way that we're using AI. Now, another way that we use AI is that, and this is just something that's probably been used in the past, but editing, depending on if you're a writer, a modifier, or everything like that, editing is an expensive process for your book, and there's different levels of editing. There's proofreading, there's a copy edit where it's much more thorough, and I find that we can take somebody's manuscript and we can do an AI proofread, and it can do a really good job. I've trained it to be like a copy editor using a Chicago style of editing and that type of thing, and it can give us indications. So when I then do hand it over to a a real editor, a live editor, live person editor, they don't have to do as much. And so it's one of those things where we're not replacing that person, but we're giving them a better product. So that means it's more efficient and more cost effective for people trying to do the book. From just AI in the general standpoint, I think it's just a natural progression. Technology always wins. When the internet came around, we used it in a certain way, and then it developed, and we all used it in a certain way. I think people now are migrating to asking Chat and Gemini and some of these other ones instead of Google, because it actually gives you an answer versus just giving you places you can go get your answer. Now, is it right all the time? No. I call it out all the time because it's like, this is not correct. But it's really good on giving ideas. It's really good. We use it a lot in our title congruency exercise. And so so it accelerates the process. So something that used to maybe take 3 days a week or something like this, we're getting done in an hour, that type of thing. So it's here to stay. Use it as a tool because it's meant to be a tool. It's going to get better and better with AI agents. They're going to be able to go out and do some independent things. And so I'm just waiting the day, I can get my robot in the house and it can do some of the cleaning and some of the other house.
Me too. I like that idea that it can cook, clean, do all the stuff you don't like to do. So what would you say? Because entrepreneur is a journey, entrepreneurship, and it's learning, growing, building skills. I'm an avid book reader. I read every single day. What book would you say has made a big impact on you that you could share with our community?
See, that's a tough one because it's just not one. I'm a book guy. I mean, back in the day, I would go to the library and just look up books, or I would go to the bookstore and look up books. And because there was no internet. You had the encyclopedia, and then you had books, and that was the only way you got knowledge. So I think it depends upon where you are in your journey, right? And so a book for me, just starting out, I read a Tony Robbins book when I was young, and it just opened my eyes to the possibility of using your mind and the thoughts are things and stuff like this. And then there's as I go on, it's like, what do I want to read now? Now I read a lot of my clients' books, right? Because I'm like, okay, I want to read them. But you have there's a bunch of books behind you, like Habits, Seth Godin. I mean, you got the YouTube book, and so besides the Bible, right? Is that the book? Yeah. So besides the Bible, from a just a general book, I can't say. I'm going to look back in my bookshelf. The motivational books that allow me to expand my thought process, to think differently than I have. The one thing I want to talk about reading books, because I fell into this, and I forgot who it is, but I realized, David Nagel. Okay, so he's a great mindset coach, and I was of the mindset, hey, you acquire the book, you read the book, and now you have the knowledge, and you run through it. And you have people like, I'll read 52 books in a year and all that stuff. That's great. But what you really need to do is you need to take one book and you need to spend a time reading it and highlighting it and understanding it and applying it to your life and go through. And it may take you a month, it may take you 6 months or a year, but now you've really integrated that into your life. And so it isn't just about acquiring the knowledge, it's the use of that knowledge. They say knowledge is power. Not really. Putting that knowledge to use in your life practically is power. So get a book, get a highlighter, read slow. If something steps out to you, highlight it and think about it, come back the next day. Maybe you read it again and it's different, but not quality over quantity, and making sure you can acclimate that into your life.
Ooh, that's so good. I know before AI, my partner would always tell me, how are you using it? And I was discounting it and saying, I don't know. This was 3 years ago. And so it wasn't until I did my first course that I basically almost fell out of my chair what it produced for me. But what I do on reading books now, I send it through AI a couple times to pull out what I am interested in. And it's amazing. My brain kind of goes towards those ideas as I'm reading it. And then I speed read and highlight and draw and do anything I can to, like you said, pull out what you can use. Because, yeah, there was times years ago I'd read a book and I'd go, what did I just read? And I think my mind was just off on some abstract concept and it wasn't really focused on applying this, whatever I was pulling out of the book at the time. So AI does give you that focus and that a view that we wouldn't get if we didn't use it. So I have one final question, but I want to tell our viewers, how can they get a hold of you, Cliff? I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure. So if they have interest, or they're just thinking about a book, or just want to chat, I can do an author roadmap call, complimentary. Just kind of gives you an idea of, we'll validate your book idea and kind of talk through the process of if you want to do it. You can reach me at idea@authorpublishing.com. You can see, I think it's links there on the screen, or down the show notes. Or if you also just send me a DM on LinkedIn, just look me up. I'm the publishing guy. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can DM me and we can set up a time. I'll throw a link to my calendar and we can do that.
Awesome. It's been a real treat. What would you want, the one thing that you would want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
You have a book in you. You don't want to go to your grave without getting that book out, at least one of your books. The satisfaction you're going to have by actually getting the book done is going to be immense. And whether you're using it in your business or you just have it on your coffee table, it's one of those things that once you're a published author, you're always a published author. And there are processes that I've got programs that run from $11 to $50,000. If you want to get a book done, there's ways to get it done, but don't let this, fritter away. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter how old you are, right? My son, when he was 8, he wrote a book because he saw what was going on. Roz is 96. She wrote a book. So I think you're probably somewhere in between.
Yes, that is so good. Well, Cliff, thank you so much for the start of a year and sharing an important topic with our community. And we appreciate you being so open about your journey. Thank you so much.